Hello everyone. Hello, Amy. This side, I don't know. It's hard to tell. But hello everyone. Happy Pride Month to everyone listening. June, and then in 11 days, it's going to be Juneteenth, which is a really awesome holiday. So we'll talk about that again next week. But happy Pride Month, everyone. We've got an amazing topic for this week's Empathy Power Up. Welcome to the Empathy Power Up with Amy J. Wilson.
And Kevin.
We're gonna talk. Today's topic is a really fun one. It's continuing from our last week where we talked a little bit about change, and now this is about driving culture change and how there is a high failure rate in culture change. And Amy's story that is so powerful that she's shared through her work with the government and how that came through, and has an incredible insight in this as well. So, without any further time wasted, Amy, I want to continue learning. So let's continue and let's talk about the high failure rate and change.
Absolutely. Hopefully I can get through it in 15 minutes. There's a lot to talk about. But I just wanted to bring us back. I've been having this kind of a thread of a story as I go through this these past few weeks. And I actually want to bring this back to the 2 weeks before the 2016 election. So I started taking on a responsibility of scaling work across government. We were doing some research on government innovation and change. And I was stepping into this new role where I was like, okay, well, let's codify it and then spread it across government. But obviously, the election didn't go as we had originally had planned. And so from the very beginning, I started getting some resistance that was coming from me. And the transition, not coming from me, but coming from the administration. So, because it's so stark difference. So the transition that ensued was really unexpected, uncertain, and challenging, but at the same time, we persevered. So, like a lot of things that were happening at the time, it felt very right for us to bring together the people that did this research with us, to bring together those change agents to co-create, which eventually became the Better Government movement. So the movement helped me build innovation.gov, take this research and create a playbook and a toolkit, and also finally design challenges for public servants to really learn and explore these things that we're talking about. Like agile, human-centered design, lean practices. And then, to bring us back to where we were last time, it took about 2 years. The movement grew to about 5,000 people at that time. And then I take on this new role as a Center of Excellence Director on transformation. So that's where we left off earlier. So I'm bringing it full circle. So something I wanted to mention is, at the end of the day, is the third point I wanted to make out of this 3-part series that we've been doing is change efforts usually have a high rate of failure, particularly in the federal government, but it doesn't have to be. It's clear what we're doing is not working. Mm-hmm. So I explore this in more detail in my book, but that we need to reframe our mindsets around change. So I'll tell you a quick story. I'd love to get what you had to say in a second, Kevin. First of all, let's talk about organizational change management, or OCM. In 1982, Julian Phillips of McKinsey & Company created it. It focuses on a repeatable model or theory and not really practical application. It is usually a public relations, information sharing, and leadership problem that is pushed downward to lead change. So what I found, and I'm steeped in this because I come from management consulting. I have a certificate in this work, and this structure is really based on our own biases and rigid structures that we've built everywhere else. it doesn't leave a lot of room for us to have feedback loops and continuous improvement. So in the end, it's not really changing the system, and it really misses the mark that culture change happens because of a movement and not a mandate. And a lot of research shows us in that space. So obviously, as you know, people keep practicing this, you start seeing higher rates of failure. And then later, decades later, about 3 or 4 years ago, McKinsey officially publishes a study that says that 70% of change efforts fail. And they said it's according to employee resistance and a lack of management support. So, like, take that as an example.
Yeah,
Like,
that's such a, and change management, and especially there's different elements, right? There's the changes in the organization, how they operate, what the processes they're using. But something that's been really important, especially in this last year, is the companies that put on Black Lives Matter social media posts, or they're like, we're going to be doing the hard work with anti-racism work, or even with right now, oh my God, LinkedIn is flooded with all the companies changing their logos to the Pride logos and the Pride flags in celebration of Pride Month. Yes, there is positive intent there. Yes, we understand that this is to show that they're supporting the LGBTQ plus community. They're supporting this. That's great. But on the other hand, it's also the failure of change is this term that we've been hearing, rainbow capitalism, or these performative allyship terms, like, oh, we'll just put up the logo, but nothing changes behind the scenes. Stories I've heard are companies where they who had shared Black Lives Matter, and we're doing the hard work on anti-racism, and then I hear, oh, just some customers didn't like that, so then they pulled back, and because they wanted to protect the sales, and capitalism wins again. And so these are the examples where it was something that change failed again, where the company wanted to change the culture, become more anti-racist. So it's there in some employees, it's there in some levels, but overall, the work to do, because it takes work to do the change, got pulled back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those are the hard conversations we need to have. And change management is just skimming the surface, right? It's created by management consulting, which we all probably already know that it is already built with the systems intact, right? So they're going to keep perpetuating those systems that we talk about. And so I know I'm a product of it. I'm still unlearning a lot of things that I learned in the management consulting world. And so it's a conscious choice. You know how we talked about empathy being a choice? It's a conscious choice I do every day, being like, let me lean into empathy here, and try to think about how do we bring people more into like a kindness and compassion with each other. So yeah. I'm going to keep going because I really want to talk about like some of the things that I've learned in this experience. So there's some really hard truths of change that I'm really come out with at the beginning of the book. That I'm like, you know what, here's where we are with empathy. Here's where we are with change, right? It's in the section of our empathy deficit. And there's 5 points I'm going to make real quick here, is that number one, people change themselves. You cannot change people no matter how much they need to change. So you need to get them excited and interested, right? So number two, few people enjoy change and often fight it. So change is often a very emotional and long process. 3, change is inevitable. So I've been taking kind of a Buddhist perspective on this. Buddhists see things as they are and not what you want them to be. So the concept of impermanence that Buddhism brings into the conversation essentially means that everything we are right now is changing and will perpetually change forever. So, you know, if things are changing all around us, there's also this next step, which is number 4, which is change is fluid and emergent. So also bringing in that Buddhist mentality of no self or nada means that we're all continually changing as individuals, and there's no permanent view of self. So we're changing and the world around us is changing. So it is literally fluid and emergent, right? Mm-hmm. So And we can change on a personal level, and therefore those around us can also change as well, right? So if we can force more change to happen. And then number 5 is that systems that we're in affect our ability to change so much more than we think. There's so many studies that say that we are all susceptible to groupthink, to following along with what norms the systems creates, and we'll follow along with whatever our authority figures are saying. So if we have hierarchical structures, those structures will keep perpetuating systems that are going to keep thinking of the status quo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What one thing that resonated so strongly is we are always changing. Change is fluid, and yet we are so averse to change. It's just such a contradictory thought process. Because when I wake up this morning, I am a different person than when I went to bed at night. That is the reality we have to accept. And so if we stop resisting to change, it makes life easier, makes life happier, in my opinion. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's like a surrender almost to this idea that things are always changing. And that's why I love about these concepts is being like, well, if you accept that things are always going to change, right, around you, and you're changing, then, you just start accepting these in a bigger way. So, as things were happening, going back to this, being in this new administration with these ideals of open and participatory and peer-driven work that I and many others were kind of putting forward, that meeting that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, where the White House said, you work for me and you work for this president, the folks from that team. What happened right after that was this idea that the White House and the administrator to GSA removed me from my post. That was on a Monday. This was the week of Halloween 2018. On Monday, I was removed from my post. On Wednesday, I was told I could never convene the Better Government movement again. And on Friday, the administrator directed a team to take down innovation.gov. Literally in front of my eyes, the website was taken down. So in one fell swoop, this organization wiped away 3 years of work and millions of taxpayer dollars. So at the time, I was really gutted, confused, angry, and depressed all at the same time. So I felt in a lot of ways like a failure. And I really kept beating myself. I'm like, how could I could have saved this, right? I could have fit into the system. I could have just said, when he said, you work for me and you work for this president, I could have been quiet and just let him just roll over me and just say, okay, this is what we're doing. And I just follow along. Right. But I have found, and like that's one of the things with 2020 vision shows me that I'm not that kind of person who's just going to, I'm going to try to do the right thing and not always the thing that is the popular thing. Right. And I guess there's another conversation we can have on like, how do you decipher what is the right thing and what is the not right thing to do? And
we should definitely put that on our agenda for sure. Yeah.
Yes. So that was something that was really transformative for me, that time. And I took time to heal from it, took my journey, started writing my book. So a lot of these things were very positive, and it just helped me process this. And that's why I can talk about it right now, as like, it was very traumatic for me, but at the same time, I've processed so much. So the last thing I just want to kind of share, and this is like underlying the entire crux of the book that I'm talking about, that kind of brings us in a hopeful manner. I was actually trying to think about these lingering thoughts. How do we embrace change and overcome the challenges so that we can actually have a future that incorporates everybody and not just a very few? So I started thinking about it, like, we need to flip the script, right? The work that we do in change is contextual. It's not, you have to shift like the sea sometimes. And to do that, I counter the 5 things that I talked about before with 5 ways that we can flip the script. So the first one is being human first. So, being focused not just on our customers, but the people and our employees who work in our companies. And number two is change from the bottom up, not the top down, which goes back to the old new power that we were talking about, and really put power, people say power to the people. It really is, giving more power to people who are around us. Number three is uncovering biases. So really knowing what our identities are, how do we show up on a regular basis, and then how is that affecting our relationships with each other? And number four is setting the right intention. You'll remember this because I think this is something you taught me partially, in the work that we were talking about very early on in our collaboration. Is you set the right intention, right? But you also have to own the impact and measure the impact, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't own the impact, and right intention can lead to harm.
Yep.
And number five is the last one, is that whole idea of being emergent and agile, right? Yeah. So always, if you accepting the fact that we're always changing as individuals, the world is changing around us. So we have to just kind of go with the flow. And, that's the mindset that we have to be ready for, and be ready, because if we're so rigid, there's going to be a lot of failure. So those are the 5 things I learned from this.
Yeah. And these 15 minutes go by so fast, it's amazing. And you learn so much in this Power Up. I'm so excited. Lots of great takeaways. Amy shares some amazing insights throughout. So follow Amy on LinkedIn and all the other platforms, because you'll see Twitter, the insights that we've talked about coming out on those. I'll reshare those. And the other piece, this is the first time we're going to do this. This is homework for you, listeners, people watching. Homework. Ask your organization, ask yourself, this change that we're talking about, Pride Month, the anti-racism work that we need to do. How has your organization truly changed this? Has it failed or succeeded in driving the change? Think about measuring the impact, and that's where you'll see. And the thing that Amy said, bottoms up. So to make it real, let's build that coalition. It needs to be a communal movement where we bring it up from bottoms up and drive that change. So if you're not seeing it, you're just seeing your company being performative and making the logo rainbow colored, or putting out the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement hashtag, then that you're seeing that this is an example, and you're yet another number that's just a high success rate of change. Mm-hmm. So let's work together, and Amy and I can help. So reach out if you want us to help with your organization as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you. And I love that closing. That just brings it all together. Thank you, Kevin. You're always brilliant, and I always love having conversations with you every Tuesday. So we will catch you next week. And next week the theme is going to be Empathy Rising, and it's part two of a 3-part, big series of the keynote that I was talking about, and how this book came about. So I'm excited to talk.
It reminds me of Andra Day's song, Rise Up. Rise. Everyone, take care. See ya.
Bye. Take care.